when I say reading charts, start reading your own. Okay? Don't look to me, just start reading the stuff that's going on in that chart. And when you see these aspects, don't look at them and say, oh my God, I got a cross, I got a square, I got this. Start saying, what is that developing? Because people that have no crosses, people that have no squares, you know, they tend not to have the strength. This creates strength. These aspects create strength. And if you have a lot of trines, it can be good, but it can make you lazy too, and make things come too easy. Okay? You gotta be watchful with that, because it tends to mean I don't push myself, I don't have the drive. I don't need to, because it comes to me anyway. You know what I'm saying? Does that fit? You know, like it's easy enough for you, doesn't it? She's got a really powerful trines in her chart. But then there's other things that are squaring and stressing and, you know, saying, look at, you got some areas here you're going to learn. Okay? Because that's what this message is. Squares, you're going to learn. And I'll force you to learn, and I'll force you to grow, because that's what these aspects are for. Do you remember the chart I did in your thing where I had all the squares and oppositions formed, and I had the planets there, had interpretations of them? Do you remember that? That is so powerful. You have no idea what you have in your hands there. And all I did was 4 planets just to give you an idea how to interpret them. Moon and Mars squaring, what does it mean? What does it produce? My teacher, Percy John Newton, I told you, the man in prison that really formed my thinking about astrology. It really made me respect it. 17 years in prison, beautiful black man. He was amazing. He was a Gemini. He was born the same day that John F. Kennedy was born. All his planets were in the 12th house of prison. Guess where Kennedy's are all? In the 8th house of death.
Wow.
What he's known for. And same man, same place, but different, you know, they're born in different places, different times. And so he had this 12th house. I met him after he got out, and we were both free in Detroit. And my daughter Larissa, I loved him so much and trusted him so much. I remember my daughter was just a little child, you know, I don't remember how old, 2, 3 years old, maybe 4, I don't recall, she's very young, maybe 4, I don't know. And we left him and his wife, we left my daughter, and they were going around Detroit, and people were calling police. These people,
no!
This little white girl, they got,
oh no!
Can you believe this stuff? You know, he was the most amazing man. I mean, you know, and yet he was in there for double murder, you know? You know, but you know, that was like, everybody, you know, things happen in life. I don't want to, you know, rationalize it, but
babysitting? Babysitting your daughter?
That's right, yes.
Wow.
Yes, because I know him, I knew his soul.
Of course, yeah.
I knew his spirit, I knew who he was. And I knew his wife,
Yeah.
who he married after. And I trusted them impeccably with everything, I knew them. But the point I'm getting at is he brought me to understand astrology. I was this, you know, young white kid that knew it all. You know, I was the one who's asked, you know, I just had all the answers, you know. You know, don't tell me this pseudoscience is anything. Until he started making predictions and telling me things and showing me things and telling me things about myself he shouldn't know. And then predicted the death of a beautiful Sandy I knew in West Virginia, who had a child. Did I tell you the story? Have I ever told the story to you? Sandy was in a very abusive relationship. She was only 17 years old. She's married to a real asshole, excuse my language. But he was a doggy, he was an alcoholic, he was nothing. He was abusive. And Sandy was, I met her through this church, and this woman who was a minister who knew I was a fugitive on the run, and she was harboring me, putting me up in her place, and I was, so I met Sandy, and she was just a beautiful little girl. When I was in prison, she kept writing me, and she wrote me a letter and told me that she had given birth to a little child, a little girl, and she knew I was into astrology, or interested, and I said, I'll let Percy do a chart for this child. So I took it to Percy, and he did the chart, and I came by his cell one day, and he's looking pretty grim. I said, what's happening with the chart? And he said, well, Ron, he said, I got bad news. And he walks over to his calendar and he circles a date. He said, within 6 days, this mother or this child will be dead. And I thought, come on, you know. Then I thought, well, maybe the baby was premature. There's a good chance the child might not survive. And kind of put it to rest. And then the next letter I got from, because you don't get your mail right away in prison, it got censored. Might take a week or two before you see what's going on out there. But you know, it's as current as the news that gets to you. And I get the letter from her. She's told me that she was having she had asthma and she was having asthma attacks. And the doctor was concerned about her because she'd just given birth to a child, and he wanted her to go in a hospital to be watched over. And the next letter I got was from the minister woman who was our friend, who told me that Sandy had called her at 12 o'clock at night and was crying and said, I can't breathe and nobody's helping me in the hospital. The doctor's not on duty. Today they'd had their lawsuit against them so big, but you know, poor people like us back then, we didn't have anything to fight them with. So what happens? So Sandy gets, Mary, the minister woman, gets up, goes to the hospital, prays over her, gives her quiet, turns down, thinks she's okay. She goes back home, and 3 o'clock, she gets another call. She's exhausted. I can't breathe, nobody's helping me. She died at 4:15 a.m. 6 days to the hour and minute of the birth of that child. That's when I got serious about astrology. That's when I said, listen, no one can do this and know this and make a prediction like that. And to predict the mother and or the child, I could see somebody saying, well, the child's premature, you know, it's a good chance the child won't live, whatever. Mother or child, he said to me. He didn't say child. What I found out was later, because I wanted to know why anybody could ever make a prediction like that, and Percy explained to me that it's called the dark moon Lilath. And the dark moon Lilath is, you can get an ephemeris for that and calculate it in your charts. It's in everybody's chart. And it was said to be in the Old Testament writings, Lilath was considered to be the first wife of Adam, but she couldn't bear children. So, of course, Adam left her and took a new wife, Adam, took Eve, and she was put out. Well, she was called the night hag and screech owl in the Old Testament, who sought to destroy the lives of mothers in childbirth in vengeance. So in a chart, if it's afflicted, as it was in this child's chart, it presages this potential of loss of the life very strong. It was so afflicted in the chart that Percy made that prediction. But it took me months to figure it out and to come to terms with it, understand it. So that's how I got into, I essentially got really into serious astrology. And I decided from that day on, I was going to be, if I could be, not in an egotistical way, but I wanted to be the best astrologer there ever was. I wanted to know this science, I wanted to understand it. And I set a goal to understand it, and I knew that during that time of 9 years, it was like a monastery for me. I had captive clientele. Nobody went anywhere. My predictions were easy to see. And if they came true, I could see the events. I do charts for people I haven't seen. How long is it since I've seen you, hon? Janella, I haven't seen her for, my God, several months, many months. But the point being that, you know, she comes back into my experience. She says, you know, Ron, you told me to do this, and I ended up doing this, you know. And so I hear the feedback. But you don't always get that when you do charts for people. You know, you don't hear back from them. You don't know what's happening in their life. And you don't know how predictive you are until someone sits down and says, you know, well, this is what you told me, and I did this, and this is what happened. Okay, so anyway, you know, I'm fortunate because a lot of clients I have, they come back year after year or month after month. I have a client, Miranda, in Chicago. I can't believe I know. I've counseled her, worked with her astrologically for years. For a couple of years anyway, 2 or 3 years maybe. And She's a single girl that goes through tumultuous times in relationships. The other day, I was sitting down, and I had to pull her chart up. It had been months since I'd heard of her, seen her, talked to her. I never met her, only on the phone. And I happened to look at her chart, and I said, this woman's going through a crisis. So what do? I don't call her up, or I don't send her I send her an email of inspiration about this day and what you can make out of it. And she says, writes me back, and I can show you the email. She says, your timing, Ron, is impeccable. How did you know? I needed to hear that. When my boyfriend just kicked me out of the car downtown Chicago last night and said it's over. And I said, because I see your chart, you're going through a crisis again. And I said, go back to the simple truths I taught you. Praise, give thanks, trust, and good. And let go of this ass, this guy. Capricorn, by the way, he was. I'm so hard on Capricorns. She said in her email, maybe I should be more careful about Capricorns. She says, maybe I'm not suited for Capricorns. Anyway, they can be cold. They can put you out in the cold, and especially the guys. Anyway. So you don't always hear back, but you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised once you start using these things. You start seeing them. And you start putting them into use and doing these charts, you're going to have 5 weeks of amazing learning. And you're going to come out of here, believe me, you may not believe this, but if you'll be true to this science, give something back, show thyself worthy, as they say in the scripture, and what does that mean? It means study this, show thyself worthy. If you really do this and really put your heart to it and get excited like I do, I've been doing this for how many years? My God, 50 years? I mean, I'm still excited. I'm just like a child in the candy store when it comes to astrology. You know that about me. Whether you know anything else, you know I'm enthused. Okay, and why am I enthused? Because it's kept me enthused for all these years. What else could do that? Think about it. Photography comes close. I love photography. But you're always learning. You never know it all. There's always something new to learn and somebody else to let you teach, Anyway, so let me go on with some of the class stuff. And one thing about this class, it's never going to be, a rote class, Aries means this, Sun in Aries and Sun in Taurus means this. And, you're not going to get that from me. I want you to go right to the meat of it. I want you to start reading charts. I want you to start interpreting. If you live back in the 60s when I was doing astrology, before the day of all this marvelous computer stuff, I would have had to teach you how to do a chart. How to calculate it, how to use logarithms, how to use an ephemeris. Okay? I would have to spend hours, and I used to do that. I taught that for years. Had students, that's what the first thing they came for. They had to learn how to do a chart before they could learn anything. Okay? Because we didn't have computers back then. The closest thing I had was a little calculator. I still have it. It's called the sexagesimal calculator. It'll do degrees, minutes, and seconds, and calculates things like that. So, let's get out of this, and let me get back into some of the rope stuff. And let me also, before I forget, get these out to everybody. Let's see, just pass them on. You didn't have one, but if you have it, and if you didn't get a diploma, let me know if there's one missing in here. And I think I made a white one and a dark one for one of you, so it's 2 of them. All right.